Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is Bets and Banter, and this week it's going down in my neck of the woods. It's going down on the East Coast. It is going down from the world's most famous arena, UFC 322. It's Jack Della Maddalena, three-name Jack, JDM, whatever you want to call him, defending that belt against none other than Islam Makhachev, the reigning pound for pound number one in terms of this mixed martial arts game. He's looking to prove that pound for pound number one status by moving up 15 pounds here. New weight class, new opportunity. Let's see if he can get it done. It should be a great fight card, top to bottom, stacked with action. And you know we can't break it down alone. None other than our guy, Wizz MMA, back in the building. Once again, we got the Friday stream. Welcome back, my brother. How we feeling this week?
Feeling tired today, but it's been a long day. Energy levels maybe a little bit lower. The brain is still sharp. Overall, great day, great week. Really excited for tomorrow. I can't count the hours anymore. I'm gonna be up from 6 a.m. game planning for a bunch of DFS stuff, a bunch of daily fantasy, and I'm just hyped for this card. I think every single fight has entertainment value. So let's get this started, brother. I'm elated, to say the least.
Heck yeah, my man. First up, we got a late addition to the card. This was a fight at 155 pounds. Camilo, he was supposed to have a fight. I want to say it was in Abu Dhabi, if my memory serves, but essentially fight gets rug pulled at the last minute, doesn't end up happening. So the UFC decided, hey, let's get him on a quick turnaround. Let's book him for another event. In steps Slava, who was the guy who accepted this fight on short notice. Slava's a guy who, he's been on hard times in the UFC. He's got a pretty solid pedigree in terms of the striking. Team Alpha Male coach, came in with a lot of hype. Frankly, the win over Chris Duncan has aged phenomenally, right? But then it's everything since where it's been tough. He's only gotten a couple wins in the UFC. The wins that he does have, they're over guys that have been struggling themselves. You got to say, shout out to Dakota Bush. He's been on an absolute tear on the regional scene, but he is on the regional scene, right? He was not in the UFC. He went 0-2, 2 in barbecue, as we say in the world of wrestling. And, he was back at home, trying to figure it out. When you look at a guy like Slava, the wins that he has in the UFC, other than that, it's 2-4. It's 2-4. It's guys that are no longer with the promotion. So Slava's 33 years of age. He's been knocked out before. Susceptibility to being wrestled. He's tried to work on that. Certainly, he's gotten better at getting up to his feet. I'd say he's still a guy that can be taken down, can be off balance. He could also be hurt on the feet. So he's got a lot of vulnerabilities is how I would describe Slava, but he's clearly got a lot of offensive potential as well. When you look at Camilo, he's a very young guy, so I don't want to make like sweeping judgments about him, right? Like I think he could definitely improve over time. I think we could definitely see him, find more mental fortitude. I could just say for myself, I always wanted to win, but I used to psych myself out of matches and really take a lot away from myself and not put myself in a position to succeed. And then I learned more about sports psychology, changed the way I was able to compete. When you look at a guy like Camilo, I feel like, he's a guy that overexerts at sometimes in certain positions. Last time out against Gabe Green, he's going for his own submission attempt very quickly. He ends up getting reversed. Everything goes sideways for him, right? So we've seen that Camilo, he's a good hammer. He's not a great nail. I think you could say similar things about Slava, but Slava's case is more about durability rather than his ability to stay in the fire. Slava's a tough son of a gun. You have to put Slava to sleep. You have to actually put him in a really tight situation, or he's not going to tap. He's not going to give anything up, right? He's going to keep trying to fight until the ref pulls you off. Like Slava really is about that life. And Camilo on the other side, I feel like, when it comes to striking fights, he's normally had, a lot more willingness to go out there and really figure it out. But I think it's when he gets fatigued, when he gets tired, when he overexerts on the mat, especially, that's when he gets, in a bad spot. So in this fight, as far as I'm concerned, based on what we've been hearing, I want to say shout out to somebody in my Patreon. Let me know, he did an interview in Portuguese. He was talking about, listen, this whole camp, I've been working on my grappling, my wrestling. I'm going to go out there and take this guy down. I'm going to go out there and show my ground game. And he is an aggressive grappler on the mat. So I think it's possible Camilo goes out there and kind of steamrolls him, takes him down, kind of does what Terrence McKinney did, right? But if he's not able to get that grappling going, it could turn into a really dicey fight. So for me, this just feels like a fight that's undercoded, a fight that's violence coded. Both guys have been finished before. Both guys take big chances on the feet. Even when Slava's going the distance, he's getting hurt in a lot of these fights. He's getting rocked. He's getting dropped. He's getting tonated. He just fights on a very thin line. And meanwhile, on the other side, Camilo, his biggest liability is getting submitted. I don't know that Slava's the guy you want to bank on to go do that. But when you're just steering into volatility, again, the under 2.5, if they just bang it out on the feet, Slava money line is probably going to look good at plus 150. So for me, it just feels like probably a dogger pass situation, probably a Camilo sub if you're looking for a long shot type of prop, because I do think he's going to go out there and try and implement that game plan, maybe an early sub prop as well. I think he's going to try and go out there and get it done fast. So, those are the kind of angles I would look at in this fight. But if he goes out there, spends himself looking for the grappling, doesn't get it, it could be Slava coming on in round 2, round 3 type of thing, kind of turning the tide, because he's, like I said, about that life. If you don't kill him, he's coming back for revenge later on. How do you feel about this one, Brother Wiz?
This one is, I think, very straightforward for me. As you mentioned, if it's on the feet, I think both guys are going to be live to get knocked out and to knock each other out. Camilo, I think, might be the faster of the two when it comes to the striking and the more powerful. But if we're talking about technique, skill for skill, it's going to be Slava no matter what. Unfortunate at times for Slava, he's just not really the best grappler or wrestler at all. So the guys know what to do against him. And at 33 years old, it seems like he has given up on just improving that aspect of his game. Now, Mateus Camilo is someone who's hungry coming off of a debut loss. I usually like to target guys coming into the spot on similar circumstances when you do have at least some semblance of a grappling offense where you can take advantage of it, because Slava here is dead to rights on the mat. Like we've seen him, he's a fish on the mat, does not work up to his feet all that well. And I think Camilo, if anything, will be more wise to spending himself on the mat, especially against someone who is, I'm not even going to say less dangerous on the mat. There's no danger that Slava really presents off his back, off of scrambles, nothing at all. So for me, I think this is a Camilo money line, but obviously the betting line is way too wide. I think both these guys are going to be slinging it out. So personally, it's under 2.5 or pass here. I'm picking Camilo to win the fight, but no way am I touching it. Entertaining fight, though. Do not blink.
Yeah, man. I think we're largely in agreement on this one. We lean towards Camilo getting it done, but I don't think that there's much betting value on the Camilo side, right? Like, I'd like to see him go out there and win a UFC level fight before I'd feel good about him in these type of spots, right? Still just 24. So, I think he's got a decent enough ceiling long term if he can start to put some things together, but he does have to put some things together. He does have to show us some growth and improvement. I picked Gabe Green by submission last time out, and for me, the problem is it's some of the same vulnerabilities we saw regionally afflicted him in his debut. That's okay if it's a one-time thing, right? But we have to kind of see those evolutions now. They gave him a striker. Let's see if he can go out there and do something different. All right. Next up, my man, it takes us to the I think I just hit something on StreamYard where I bounced us out of the Tapology page. So let me pull that back up. But it's going to be Basinger Susurkaev in the second fight of the night, guys. He's taking on Eric McConico here. And I had said on Contender Series, I thought that this guy Susurkaev, it was only a matter of time for he was going to get a submission. He got it in his UFC debut. So Susurkaev already out there, doing his thing. Now he's back in the cage again, fighting Eric McConico, 1-1 in the UFC. Wiz, we'll have you start us off here, brother. What do you think, my man?
I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. The line is where it is because it's accurate. I think Susurkaev knockout or submission in round 1 is likely what's going to happen. McConico is someone who's not as durable as what we've seen in the UFC, and I don't think Susurkaev is going to play around with this food here. First round.
Fair enough, my man. I will say this. I think Susurkaev is going to win. I think he's going to finish him. I think, first round's very live. But I also will just say, McConico is kind of a guy who was just an exister against Ruziboev, right? If you remember, like, he kind of was just doing some feinting and some moving. I think he only landed like 4 significant strikes in that fight, and it went to the second round. So for me, I just feel like, McConico is a guy that might just find a way to like lull him a little bit, slow it down, look for some clinches. And that's the only concern I would have with like a round 1 play. But I do think Susurkaev is going to finish him. I think, in all likelihood, it's going to be in the first 2 rounds. It's going to be probably in under 7.5 minutes. So I think Susurkaev gets it done fast, quick, and in a hurry. And I will also just note, McConico's never been submitted before. If you get hit really hard, it makes you make bad decisions. If he gets hit, shoots a bad attempt at a takedown, I think Susurkaev could finish him. I've mentioned before, I really like his instincts in the grappling. I like the way he moves. I like the way he flows. He takes the back well. He can go to the front headlock pretty well. So, yeah, I think Susurkaev, it's kind of like a pick your poison deal when you're fighting this guy. I love his poise under pressure. Last time out, he showed, he got hurt in his UFC debut. What did he do? Worked his way through adversity, came out the other side against a really tough guy who I think will win fights in the UFC. So as far as I'm concerned, McConico, he was kind of lucky to win that fight against Cody Brundage, certainly a close fight. Hats off to him. I think he's a guy that if he's going to win fights in the UFC, more often than not, it's going to be decisions. On the other side with Susurkaev, I think he's going to get guys out of there and like I said, do it quick, fast, and in a hurry. All right, man. Let's move on to the next fight. We don't have to belabor the point there. We're both like Susurkaev to get it done in a big way. Next up, we got Angela Overkill Hill, somebody who's certainly worthy of our respect, certainly somebody who's been a contributor in this women's side of the game for a very long time, especially in the strawweight division, a pioneer. I think that's totally fair to say. But on the other side, man, we've got a young, hungry Fatima Kline who just so happens to represent the Northeast, the great state of New York as well. When you look at the jiu-jitsu lineage, right? Again, when you look at who she trains with, who she surrounds herself with, she surrounds herself with people, that you would think would put her on a championship trajectory. Before she got to the UFC, she was highly touted. Came in against Jasmine Jasudavicius, got an honest 15 minutes under her belt, right? Got to learn some hard lessons, but that was a lot about physicality. And Jasmine is a very physical, big, strong girl up a weight class. So that was a tough fight for her to make her debut. Then she goes out there. She gets 2 fights under her belt in her division. How does she look in those ones? She goes out there and gets the wins. She goes out there and gets dominant victories. She goes out there and gets finishes. When these girls are out there, they're turning into wrestlers against Fatima Kline because they don't want to be on the feet. They don't want to strike it out with her. They're not liking how those exchanges are going. And I think that when you're looking at Fatima Kline, she's getting comfortable in these striking exchanges. And if she needs to, if she wants to, I think she can take these fights to the ground. I do think, in her last fight, she didn't insist on the ground game, in part because she, faced some resistance on the first takedown attempt, and in part because she was having a lot of success on the feet. So she didn't feel like she needed to. I feel like against Angela Hill, she has opportunities to, maybe crack her chin. Angela is 40 years of age. She's been fighting for a very long time. She's closer to 41 than 40. She's been hurt before. She's been rocked before. She's been dropped before. I bet the 25-1 on Mackenzie Dern by KO. She did everything but KO her in that fight, right? Beat her, every which way but loose. And so Angela is a very tough woman, very game fighter. But I also just think every dog has their day. And I think Fatima Kline right now is hungry, and I think she wants it. And I think she's a potential contender in this division. And I think Angela Hill on the other side, arguably could have lost her last 3 fights in a row, maybe not showing the same gumption that we saw from her even 4 and 5 and 6 fights ago. Maybe she's just a little bit over that hump. So for me, I'm going with Fatima Kline, and I think she's going to make a statement here. She's got 2 finishes already in the UFC. I think she's going to go out there and finish Angela Hill as well. What do you think, my man?
I tend to see it the same in terms of finishing, but I do think that at some point, Angela Hill is going to actually find herself uncomfortable in the striking, and she might actually shoot a takedown here, which she doesn't really do all that often. And I think Fatima Kline's going to get her out via sub, personally. Fatima Kline's going to be the better striker over here. And then Angela Hill's last fight against Yasmin Lucindo, she really struggled with just entering in the pocket at all. She would just get clocked every single time. And then Yasmin was landing her jab effectively. She was really landing a lot in that fight. And I think Fatima Kline is a more accurate and precise striker than Yasmin Lucindo. She doesn't throw as many looping shots. She never really overextends her shots too. You can kind of tell she's still balanced when she's striking, as compared to Lucinda, where she was almost throwing herself off that center line uh, multiple times throughout the fight. So I think Fatima is going to be in front of her more often, and I think that's going to just apply that much more pressure to the Angela Hill side. And as she gets touched up on the feet, I do expect her to shoot, and I think it's going to be a submission shortly after for Fatima Kline here.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, man, 15 years younger, 3 inches of reach, 3 inches of height. Like Fatima Kline is just a bigger, younger woman who is very hungry right now. So if Angela Hill goes out there and gets the win, what the fuck do you do other than take the hat off to her, salute the OG? But for me, it just seems like this is the kind of fight where, you can get old quick in mixed martial arts. And Fatima Kline just might make Angela Hill look a little bit old out there. So for me, I feel like Fatima's going to get the win. My guy Paul says Fatima going to fold her up like a deck chair. I can't go that far. I got too much respect for Angela, but for my wallet, for my accounts, that would be pretty fucking solid. So let's see how that turns out for everybody. Like my guy Mark is saying, waiting for Bets and Banter to drop like Christmas as a child. I appreciate you, brother. I'm waiting for Fatima Kline ITD to drop like a Christmas present for me. So hopefully that'll happen for the community. But let's see how it turns out.
Yeah, and you have a fighter.
Oh no, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick note. You have a fighter that's at 40 years old on the outs versus a fighter, Fatima Kline, who's on the ascendance here in the UFC. This is just like it's a layup spot, I think, for Fatima, with all due respect to Angela Hill.
There you have it. All right, man. Next up, we got Pat Sabatini taking on Chepe Mariscal. Wiz, why don't you start us off on this one, my man? The rematch, many years in the making. Who do you think gets it done?
Yeah, as you mentioned, this is a rematch, and in the first matchup, Chepe won a split decision. Could have went the other way very easily. A lot of people scored it for Sabatini, if I remember correctly as well. This is a fight. Initially, 3 or 4 weeks ago, when I was looking ahead to this card, in my brain, the photo of Chepe Mariscal just kept popping up, and I'm a big fan of how aggressive this guy is. I'm a big fan of just overall his style. I just think that he's running into a brick wall this time around. Yes, Pat Sabatini has, shown durability issues in the past, and we go back and we look at the record and we see who those fights were against, and it starts to make sense. 2 years ago, Diego Lopez is challenging for a title right now. And then Damon Jackson KO, that was the one that was, not the greatest of looks, because Damon Jackson doesn't really KO anyone. So I'm not going to try and defend the chin of Sabatini at all. I do think that it's fragile. He did hire a sports psychologist not too long ago to help work with him over the past year and a half specifically, I believe it is. And it's shown in his last 2 fights, going in there with a little bit better of a process, a little bit more level-headed. But you have a guy on the other hand in Chepe who goes out there and creates chaos. He's going to stand right in front of you, and he's going to push the fight to where he wants it to be. My issue with his game plan this time around, obviously we say the saying all the time, and no 2 fights are going to be the same. No 2 rematches, like first matchup and rematch, they're never going to be the same. And it's been so long that I feel like Chepe and Sabatini have both improved 100x on their skills. But I just think that Sabatini's skills are a little bit more solid at this point in the career. Chepe is really going to try and implore the cage push, grimy styled fight that we're used to seeing, and unloading on a couple of shots and elbows in the clinch. I think that's a recipe for disaster here against Pat Sabatini. I think once he gets into the clinch, he'll be able to reverse him, put Chepe's back against the cage, and take him down from there. And when Pat has you down, more recently, we've seen that you're not getting up, but not just that, you're getting your head pounded through the canvas. Pat's been a lot more aggressive, whether it's in the jiu-jitsu or whether it's with the ground and pound. The ground and pound is going to open up the submissions, and the submissions are going to open up the openings for ground and pound. So you go back and forth. And I think he's just going to be positionally too dominant for a guy like Chepe, who is going to try and utilize his judo here against the cage, but you just don't want to do that against a high-level black belt like Sabatini. So for me, think this is going to be Sabatini, but more often than not, I think this is actually going to be a decision, 29-28 type fight.
Yeah, earlier on in the card, I felt like there was a lot of fights that, you kind of just could pick a winner and, maybe it'll be right or wrong, but the evidence kind of leads you to pick one side or the other, right? This fight, there's a reason it's closely lined. You can make a credible argument for both guys. I think the argument for Chepe, simple as, is that, he won the last fight. He's a young guy, 2 years younger than Pat, right? So he's not a spring chicken, but a little bit younger, a little bit fresher, perhaps. And, he's also a guy that goes out there and lands a lot of damage in his fights, goes out there, throws a lot of volume, gives the judges a lot to look at, make sure that he, gets his optics going late in a round, turns it up a little bit. He just does a lot of things that are smart, that are savvy. He's been around fighting for a long time, also a scrambly guy, a little bit awkward. On the other side, though, I will just note as a criticism, right? We got the pros, we got the cons on the other side. Like Chepe Mariscal has one finish in the UFC. That was a injury TKO against Jack Jenkins. So you don't want to take that away from him, right? Like quality win, but you also have to say like, okay, he's not really finishing anybody else. He's not putting anybody else away. He's had a couple other guys on the brink, on the ropes, couldn't quite get them out of there. So he's a DFS commodity, right? Goes out there and puts up high scores. On the other side, same thing's true about Pat. Pat's a guy that's gone out there. He's been very high scoring in his wins. Been a guy that can go out there and dominate, minute over minute consistently, right? Against Joanderson Brito, there wasn't really a lot of sweaty moments there. He kind of just dominated the fight. A handful of submission attempts, I guess, from Brito. Maybe a couple wild swings before he got to a takedown, but it was kind of like Pat just knew where he wanted the fight to be, took it there over and over, and he's gotten a lot better at holding guys down, controlling them from that top position, doing enough to not let the referee intervene and kind of hold them down and win the fight. And I will say, maybe to the detriment of his new style, he's been a little bit more risk averse. He's been a little bit more willing, content to like hang out on the top position and not go for subs. And back in the day, that was part of what made his grappling style a little bit more entertaining, a little bit more free flowing. And against a guy like Chepe, I think that's what gave him a lot of opportunities to get back up, to scramble, to move. Chepe's got that hood judo, as he likes to call it. He is a tricky guy. He is a guy that's willing to, create a frenetic scramble. He has a really good cardio base to just go all day doing that. But, the one thing that can really sap your cardio is when somebody establishes really good positions and makes you work out of them the real way, right? Like the old-fashioned way, slow and steady, one small improvement at a time. It can be frustrating. It can kind of take away, your mental focus as well. You're kind of just stuck in a repeating cycle of negative positions. And that's kind of the Pat Sabatini experience lately. So if I was more confident that Chepe could knock him out, that Chepe would knock him out, certainly, then I would lean towards the Chepe side. But the more I did research this week, the more I dug into it. Like Chepe is a guy that can pack a punch, that can be dangerous, but his finishing instincts are not as clean as somebody like Diego Lopes, who like, if you get hurt in front of that guy, problems are abounding, right? Like shit's about to go sideways for you quickly. And even with Damon Jackson, like you can just go look at that guy's record. He's a finisher. Damon Jackson, maybe it's not all knockouts, but Damon finds ways to put guys away, break them. And if he doesn't, he can lose the fight, right? So Damon comes out there and he's a guy who starts hot normally in his fights. And I feel like for Pat Sabatini, he's understanding now where his bread is buttered. So this is a fight where I changed my opinion pre-tape to post-tape. I do not like betting on those fights just because it makes me feel a little bit skittish, but I have to, go with what the research tells me. And I felt like Pat Sabatini, upon research, is just a little bit better of a fighter. So I understand why he's slightly favored here. Anything you want to add before we move to the next one, my man?
Not at all, but this is another fight that is just, we're going to say this all night long now. It's just another banger. Like this is, yes, a rematch, but it's the fact that we're going back and forth in our head about Pat Sabatini with a guy like Chepe too. It's very compelling. I'm really excited for this fight specifically, and it could be one of the better fights of the night.
Couldn't agree more. The reason I picked Pat is because I feel like his chance to win is sub or decision. Whereas I feel like for Chepe, a lot of his win equity is probably tied up with that KO. I think he could win a decision as well. Damage over control type of win. But I just feel like he's going to spend a lot of time, in negative positions if Pat's able to get what he wants here. And if Pat's not able to get what he wants, he's probably going to be getting hit on that shit a couple times and, potentially getting rattled. So let's see how it turns out, man. Pat has really put together a little momentum now, got a couple tough wins in a row, has a really good resume in the UFC. I'd love to see something nice happen for Pat Sabatini because he's been dealt from the bottom of the deck a few times. So let's have to see. Next up, my man, talk about a potential changing of the guard here. We've got the Darce Knight, Kyle Daukaus. Philadelphia is certainly well represented on this card in terms of the Northeast guys. And, you look at a guy like Daukaus, 32 years of age, looked like he was in his career best form last time out against Michel Demoledor Pereira. Started a lot more hot than he has in a lot of his UFC fights. And the other thing about Daukaus is, I think we got to give him some credit for the guys that he was losing to on that initial UFC run. Like everybody wants to bury the guy for losing some fights in the UFC. And, he certainly wasn't the best UFC middleweight at the time, right? His record reflected that. But you look at a lot of the guys he was losing to, and they're still around in the UFC, and they're having a lot of success. So Brendan Allen, I think in his UFC debut, yeah, man, that's a tough fight, right? It's a tough way to get introduced to the promotion. And even guys like Roman Dolidze at the time didn't have as much clout and respect as his name carries now. Eric Anders, certainly towards the back end of his career, right, the twilight of his career. But Eric Anders is a guy that had a ton of longevity in the middleweight division, was a ranked fighter, was a guy that got serious wins in his career. So I just feel like you got to give Daukaus a little bit of leeway there. And on the other side for Gerald Meerschaert, he's one of my favorite fighters in the UFC, man. Goes out there, represents for jiu-jitsu, underrated kickboxing, but he's always been slow. He's always lacked the, most fundamental durability, and he's worked around that, right? He's been a very savvy fighter that found ways to win, that did what he needed to do. And I don't know that Gerald still has the same physical, dynamic abilities that he used to. I don't know that he has the same cardio that he used to. The RDR fight, as much as it says about RDR and where he was at and the things he was able to do, it also said, a little bit of a changing of the guard where GM3 goes from being the guy who in round 3, if it comes down to who's fresher, who wants it more, who's going to grapple better in round 3, that's a GM3 fight, baby. He's going to win that fight. And he got beaten that fight, right? And he almost was death gassed in that fight to the point where he just had to capitulate there. And I feel like for me, the problem with GM3 is that if the durability starts to go, it already wasn't great. If the cardio starts to go, it was really a lot of when he needed to win some of these fights. The fact that the takedowns aren't materializing in a lot of these fights, he needs to rely on guys gassing out in front of him, panicking, falling apart. And I just don't know that Daukaus is going to do those things. So for me, the price is too big here on the money line. Daukaus is just not a guy that you expect to see a minus 500 price tag next to his name. But if you just ask me on a gut instinct level, what do I think happens here? I think the way hungrier guy right now is Kyle Daukaus. And I feel like, having this UFC opportunity taken away from him was an eye-opening experience. And I think right now he's extremely motivated to go out there, get another win, get another contract, really secure himself in the UFC. And I think against a real athlete, it's all going to fall apart for Daukaus, with all due respect, But I just don't know that GM3 right now at this stage of his career is that kind of athlete that's going to give Daukaus real problems. So for me, the pick here is Daukaus, but probably a little bit overblown on the money line because he got that first round knockout so easy last time. But for me, the youth, the cardio, the size, the fact that he can also scramble and grapple pretty well, I feel like those are all assets that Kyle Daukaus can use to win this fight. What do you think, man?
You couldn't have said it any better. I think Gerald Meerschaert's on the outs when it comes to the UFC. Unfortunately, 3 losses in a row. And Kyle Daukaus last time out against Michel Pereira really looked good in the striking. And let's not forget, though, Kyle Daukaus is another one of those Philly guys that are fragile. So, yes, he should win this fight. He's a minus 480 favorite. He can win by knockout. He mentioned that he wants to knock this guy out. Gerald Meerschaert is chinny. But Gerald Meerschaert can punch too. He has power. The power is the last thing to go. Does he have the technical ability? And the striking specifically is what I'm talking about, not jiu-jitsu. I don't know. I'm not putting it out of the realm of possibility for Gerald KO1. Let me just put it there. I do think it's Daukaus KO1 though. I'm just gonna end it at that.
Dude, I gotta say this one thing on behalf of Narrative Nation. Gerald Meerschaert was a longtime product of Duke Roufus, the late Duke Roufus. So if there was ever a time for GM3 to turn back the clock and go full, kickboxer mode in honor of Coach Duke, this might be the matchup. So I saw somebody mention in the chat, it was AZ, I think. Hopefully I pronounced that right, AZ. Fight not going the distance, minus 220. Yeah, I'd rather lay that chalk than Daukaus money line personally. So, that, like, for me, that feels way more appealing, and it's a way cheaper price. It gets you, I'd say, the vast majority of a Gerald Meerschaert win equity in the UFC. Like, guy's a proven finisher throughout the course of his career. And also it gets you a lot of Daukaus' win equity. Yeah, if it turns into a disgusting decision, then, don't know what to say there, but it just feels to me like that's a lower percentage outcome than, like I would probably put that at like, I'm trying to like gut feeling, but like minus 400, I feel like for this fight not to go the distance is probably appropriate. So I'm not like a big parlay guy, but that's just my gut instinct. Like 80% feels right on this fight ending inside the distance. But with that being said, my brother, we can move to the next fight on the card, and we can have you start us off, my man. Uriah Faber's A1 Combat is a California-based promotion. Ethan Ewing has been having some success. I think he's a California guy. I also have to say, watching his tape, when you look at a short notice guy, we've seen some guys come in on short notice that are, far from UFC level. And like the only reason they got here is because they're, short notice and like, hey, we got a spot for you, but it's going to be 2 fights and you're out of here. I feel like this guy's going to win fights in the UFC. I'll start with that. But I just think this fight is a pretty tough fight to turn around a week from another fight and try and go get this win across the coast, across everything else. How do you feel about this one, my man? And what do you think about his future in the UFC, even aside from this matchup?
I'm going to be very honest. I have not really taped Ethan all that much. I do know what Malcolm brings to the game, and we really haven't seen too much film on Malcolm in the UFC is what I'm speaking of, because he's been finishing these guys fairly quickly, and he's been looking good doing it. Malcolm has some very creative striking and is very powerful with that hook. He likes to set up his feints with the knees. He fakes a step or he fakes a switch, and he throws whether it's the left hook or the right hook. Lately, it's been that right hook. Ethan Ewing, I can't really speak too much. I've heard that he's a solid striker. He actually fought last week in A1 Combat and won the belt as well. So I'm just not going to really play too much into this, but I do think that more often than not, when a fighter steps up on this short of a notice, the under is always going to be in play, and there's a reason why I think that number got destroyed. I'm not sure if it's still at I saw it yesterday at minus 180s. Right now, currently best available on Bet Online is minus 155. I actually do like that. So I'll be taping after this.
You said minus 155 for which? I missed what the odds were on.
The under 1.5.
Oh, okay, interesting. All right, yeah, I don't hate that look. I will say this: the one thing that I mentioned, this is a really well match made card, and when you get a short notice guy, a lot of times it's like, all right, this is going to be a steamrolling. The thing about this fight is, I did see enough in that fight with Billy Brand that made me feel like Ewing might just walk onto a huge shot in this fight. Like when you watch the way he fights, he's a guy that can dictate, can operate with a jab, but he's a guy that loves the fight. He kind of gets in there and gets a little aggressive at times and is willing to kind of take one and give one and exchange. And that's the kind of thing I think that might end up biting him back here. But who I would analogize him to is John Lineker. That's who kind of came to mind when I was watching this guy fight, because he is willing to mix in a takedown every so often, but a lot of what he does is walk forward, maraud with the jab, maraud with some long hooks to the body, look for those big shots upstairs, and try and throw it in combination. Like if you start covering up against the fence, he's going to try and throw 5-6 big bombs at you and see if he can put you down. So he's a fun guy, man. He swings hard. His losses as a pro, they were his first 2 fights. I watched one of them. The guy seemed like a pretty dedicated leg lock attacker, and he went for a knee bar, then he went for a rolling ankle lock, then he went for a heel hook, and he was able to heel hook him on like his third attempt. So I do think like the more likely outcome in this fight is Wellmaker finding the big knockout shot. But I do think this guy's winning UFC fights, like period. Like I think he's a good fighter. Watching how he was fighting against Billy Brand, one of the things that I will say is like, I don't imagine a lot of props are going to open up early on this fight. Like I think, especially takedown props and stuff, they're probably not going to be open until tomorrow. So I almost want to shut the fuck up, but I'm just going to say it because I don't think bookmakers listen to this show, and hopefully, somebody will be able to take advantage. Hopefully it'll be me, but if not me, then I hope somebody can. And it's just looking at the fact that Ewing kind of gave up a few really easy money takedowns to Brand in that fight, and then like got right back up to his feet type of thing. But the takedowns he was giving up at times were like, getting off balance, like getting out of position sometimes. And also just like, he'd shoot a takedown, then, Brand would shoot one back and get it, just like he was the one that started the wrestling exchange, and you'd think he'd be ready for a follow-up, and he kind of just like got barreled over by the takedown attempt. So I think there is a chance that his small stature kind of comes back to bite him just a little bit in this one. Because the other thing I will note about Wellmaker, I think the rumors of his grappling not being good are like way overstated. Like I think if you watch the tape on his grappling, he's a guy that's a little bit guillotine happy, like many MMA fighters, but he's also a guy that, he's got a pretty good ability to work back up to his feet, got a good front headlock series. And he's a guy that knows how to hand fight, knows how to use some of his leverage as well. So I think both these guys have some similarities, right? Which is that they both hit hard. They both are willing to commit hard to their offense. But I'd say the differences are that, Ewing likes to come forward and kind of get in your face and push the issue. And Wellmaker likes to punish guys for doing that. So for me, I just feel like Wellmaker's probably going to get the win here. But I would not be surprised if until he finds that kill shot, that this fight looks way closer than the line, just because of the way Ewing fights. Like he's a guy that pushes the issue, throws a little bit of volume out there. And Malcolm, as we know, is willing to kind of wait for his opportunity, be patient, look to close the distance with a fight-ending shot. And I think that that's probably the way this one ends. But like I said, I expect this one to play out kind of close until that happens. So I'm excited for this, man. I'm excited for both these fighters. I was excited about the Cody Haddon fight, but I was pretty confident Malcolm Wellmaker was going to win that one. And this one, I'm excited for it. I still think Malcolm's going to win, but I would be a lot less bullish about like betting it, anything like that, because now the price has increased, and I think the degree of difficulty is quite similar. That's how I would say it. Cody presents different challenges. He's harder to out-grapple. He's a guy that really showed Dan Argueta, the wall with the hips over and over and over again on those takedown attempts. And for me, like that shows like the guy can just push at a hellacious pace. What I saw from Ewing is he can knock guys out. He can mix it up in a couple different phases, and he's not a punk. So he does offer some stuff here. He's got some intangibles that you like for a big dog price like this, but 7-day turnaround, his nose kind of looks like it's already broken coming into the fight. And this guy ain't no JDM with 8 wins in the UFC under his belt, right? Billy Brand, that's a solid win, but it's not a win that tells us like this guy is a lights out UFC fighter right now today. So for me, Wellmaker's the pick, but a little bit hesitantly here. And that's what we got, man. Anything you want to add there before we kick it to the next one?
Yeah, I actually was mid-typing this in the chat. So I was doing a little wiki capping. And he beat Billy Brand last week on A1 Combat. Billy Brand is not the best fighter. And then he did beat Santos Verdinez in round 1. Santos Verdinez is decent. I do recognize a couple of the names on his record, so I'm kind of excited to tape this guy now. Seeing the results of the fights, doesn't look like a pushover at all. But again, this is up a weight class technically because they're catch weight here. Since Ethan had to weigh in.
I was gonna say I don't think there's any way he's cutting all that weight again.
There ain't no way, especially on 2 days. So who carries that better? There's a lot of variables in this fight that can make it sketchy.
I feel that, my man. And the thing I will just say about Malcolm going forward is like clearly the guy's got huge knockout power, but I think one day people will get burnt chasing the Malcolm KO prop because he does have a crafty front headlock game. And he is willing to go for that choke. Like if guys shoot in on him, if he gets guys in the clinch and they get their head out of position, he's more than willing to look for that hold. So I do think he's going to get a guillotine finish one day in the not too distant future in the UFC. He did say, though, he's going for that first round knockout. And also, I got to say this before we move to the next one. Shout out to our guy, Mills, who Malcolm Wellmaker was quoting the 3Gs up on his media day interview. So shout out to Mills. I hope that you hear this, brother. And peace, love, and chicken grease to a guy who got a big shout out today. So, yeah, man, that was awesome. But next up, we got the local Erin Blanchfield. We've been big Erin Blanchfield advocates on this show for a long time. Obviously you got to say, celebrate the wins, own the losses. I wasn't saying Erin Blanchfield lock of the century when she fought Manon Fiorot, but I did think she was going to go out there and win the fight. It did not happen that way, right? Like Manon Fiorot gave her a tour of the octagon, so to speak, right? Too big, too physical, too strong, too good at striking, too good at maintaining the distance. But what did we learn about Erin Blanchfield? Even if it's 5 rounds of adversity, she will walk forward and attempt to win, attempt offense, try anything she can. She's a gamer. She's a competitor. She really wants to be in there. And I think that when you look at her against Tracy Cortez, I see a younger fighter. I see a hungrier fighter in Erin Blanchfield. I see a more technical fighter. And I think that, there's some red flags for me on the Tracy Cortez side long-term, right? The fact that she's very infrequently competing, the fact she's got an 0-2 knockdown ratio in the UFC, the fact that she's really never had a blowout win at the UFC level. You go back and look at a lot of what she's done and, she hasn't finished fights, right? Like she's just not a very dangerous fighter according to the numbers, right? And eventually you are what the numbers say you are. And she's a decisionator, right? On the other side, Erin Blanchfield is a woman that can go out there and finish fights. She can go out there and do damage. She can go out there, put up 10-8 rounds. She can go out there, put people in the bottom position and put doubt in their mind, make them second guess why they started martial arts in the first place, And I feel like Erin Blanchfield has a mean streak to her, right? Cold-blooded. That's a good way to put it, man. She almost ripped Molly McCann's arm off in front of the Garden once, and I think she's about to light up the Garden again. Tracy Cortez, Mexican fighter, got that corazon, right? She'll talk about that. And I think that she really does have that, right? She's a tough girl. I just think she's going to get outclassed in this one. And I think Erin Blanchfield been sitting on the fact that she lost this fight to this girl a long time ago. And Tracy, has kind of been sitting on those victories, right? And kind of been sitting atop the division and doing it. And it's like, for me, I just feel like Erin Blanchfield's been watching in the background, plotting, scheming, getting ready to exact her revenge. And I think she is going to exact her revenge. I think she's going to put Tracy in the spin cycle and, put her in some bad positions. And I think she's going to put on for New York. So shout out to the great state of Arizona. A lot of great fighters out of AZ. But the other red flag I'll mention is Santino DeFranco, a great coach in MMA, a guy who I really respect, listen to his program, like enjoy the guy's opinions and all this stuff. But he had talked about, I got a handful more fights that I'm going to be in a corner for, and that's it. I'm going to move on. And, he's ready to move on in his life. I worry that Tracy Cortez might be ready to move on in her life. There's easier ways to make money when you got 2 million followers on Instagram and people want to hear your opinion and, people want to take pictures on Instagram and all this stuff with you. Hey, that's a great way to make a living, right? Certainly easier than getting punched in the face, right? And meanwhile, Erin Blanchfield kind of all in about the quiet part, right? The doing the work part, the martial arts part. She really loves it, right? And she's been training for a long time. So for me, I just feel like Erin Blanchfield, dedicated martial artist, really about that life. And I feel like for Tracy Cortez, maybe 1 foot in, 1 foot out, that's a little bit of a concern here, right? Only 31. So if Tracy still wants it, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm signing the death warrant too early and that on her career, but your coach is getting ready to move on. You got all these opportunities outside the cage. You're doing constant media appearances and all these other things. And I just don't love that, right? Whereas Erin Blanchfield just seems like the picture of focus, a girl who really wants to be a world champion in her life. That's what she wants. That's what she pursues, right? So I just feel like the skills, the tenacity, the intangibles, I feel like they all check the Erin Blanchfield side here. So for me, give me Erin Blanchfield to reverse the result. And I would not be surprised if she's able to put Tracy in some bad positions, especially later in this fight, and, you know, maybe get her out of there, right? In the first fight that they had, she threatened an armbar, she threatened an armbar, she threatened an armbar, and then she got on top and put Tracy in a bad way. And Tracy had a lot of top position. That was a difference maker there. I think now Erin Blanchfield is more cognizant of the fact that it's important to fight for top position, not just fight jiu-jitsu position for jiu-jitsu position. And I think she understands MMA. So I think she's going to go out there and win this fight by being the better MMA fighter. What do you think?
I'm going to start this by a very unpopular opinion, not related to fight outcome. The people that I'm just going to stop right there. I'll stop it right there. Looking at the fight, Erin Blanchfield versus Tracy Cortez. I think the biggest thing that I came out with, and after doing the tape, and even just before doing the tape, it was a general thought in my brain that Erin Blanchfield knows jiu-jitsu and Tracy Cortez is not really the best at it. Tracy Cortez can wrestle, and that's about it. Yeah, in the striking, she doesn't offer too much. Neither does Erin, so I'm not really gonna point too much there. But I think where this fight is gonna take place is in the grappling department. I think these ladies are both uncomfortable on the feet, and at some point, it's gonna end up on the mat. Whether Tracy or Erin is on top, I do expect Erin to work her way back to a dominant position if she's on bottom, or maybe she could throw up subs from bottom. I just don't see a way where Tracy Cortez is not in any sort of danger on the mat here. And in the striking, if it's 50-50, I do expect one of the ladies to initiate a grappling if they feel like they're at a disadvantage there as the fight goes on. You got to switch it up. And if you're not the best striker and things aren't going your way, you're going to shoot, because that's what you're used to doing. Both of these ladies, they too tend to shoot takedowns. And I just think that Erin's jiu-jitsu is levels and levels above Tracy Cortez. Not to mention Erin Blanchfield is one of Fatima Kline is one of Erin Blanchfield's main training partners. Maybe a little bit more than that from what I'm hearing. But yes, I do think that Erin Blanchfield is going to win this fight dominantly, 30-27.
I think that, I would not be surprised if she finds a way to finish this fight late. I think that her rage meter is going to be high coming into this fight, because especially, guys, if you remember, she was really pissed off when Macy Barber pulled out of that fight. That was supposed to be her springboard opportunity, big main event. And, that kind of got rug pulled out from under her. Now she's got another big opportunity, rematch on a pay-per-view. How do you stand out on a crowded pay-per-view card? You go out there and light up the garden again like you did against Meatball Molly. You show her exactly what time it is. Erin cold-blooded Blanchfield. She's made me a lot of money, so I'm biased as shit. But I feel like Erin's going to get on top of this woman and put her in some bad spots. So just take that for whatever it's worth. That's the way I see it going down. All respect to both competitors. And if Tracy gets the win, I'll show nothing but love and respect, just like Manon Fiorot. She got the win fair and square. Hats off to her, right? But even in that fight, Erin had one moment where she went for a guillotine, and Manon looked like she saw a ghost. So I just feel like that Erin Blanchfield, dangerous in the jiu-jitsu at all times. And if she gets the top position, she can also be aggressive. Here's the other thing I'll mention. Who is more likely to throw kicks in this fight? I feel like it's Erin Blanchfield. If it's a boxing-only match, Tracy Cortez can box. But I feel like Erin Blanchfield has shown she can get head kicks. She can go out there, throw to all levels of the body. I feel like that's a difference maker. All right, man. Next up, fun middleweight scrap. We got Roman Kopylov taking on Gregory Robocop Rodriguez. How do you see this one going down, my man? Is Robama coming back for another big dub? Is he getting the takedowns here? Is he going out there finding that first UFC submission? Or do you see Roman Kopylov getting the job done as an underdog here? What do you think?
I think if Robocop takes down Roman Kopylov, he instantly looks minus 400. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. On the feet, instantly looks minus 130, which line is at minus 185 right now. I think Kopylov can hurt this guy bad. and it doesn't take much to hurt Robocop at all. Kopylov's body kicks are going to be a weapon here. And the one thing about Kopylov's game that I think is going to be what matters in this fight is the fact that Kopylov throws straight. You never see him throw looping punches all that often. Everything goes straight to the button. And that's really how you're going to get to Gregory Rodriguez. This guy's head doesn't really move off the center line all that often when he's striking. And he tends to eat a lot of shots. I think the narrative of him having a bad chin is incorrect. I think the dude just eats a ton of shots in a short amount of time, which leads to him being hurt a lot. But again, if he takes this fight down, which I think this time around, I expect him to take the fight down. I don't think he wants to deal with the long rangey kicks from Kopylov here. Even though both guys are around the same size, Kopylov going to be a little bit shorter. I just don't know why Robocop does not consistently use his jiu-jitsu, because we talk about his jiu-jitsu all so often, but we just never get to see it. So there is a fear in my brain whenever I am betting anything related to Gregory Rodriguez for that sole factor. It's like, is he going to be smart or is he going to be dumb? Is he going to take the fight down to the mat when he knows he has the advantage? Specifically in this spot where the advantage is like white belt level here when we're talking about Roman Kopylov. We saw what Albert Duraev did to this guy, figure four in his legs, and really just doing that the whole round too. I know that fight was years ago, but still.
I had a big bet on Albert Duraev there, and when he was standing on the feet kickboxing and got his eye fucking swollen up, I wanted to puke in my hands. But then he took him down so easy the rest of the fight.
It's quite unfortunate, dude. So it really brings me away from speaking on this fight confidently. Ultimately, I will still lean Gregory Robocop Rodriguez to win this fight because I do think he will finally wake up and take this guy down. I would not be surprised if Kopylov wins either, though. Kopylov by KO, Robocop by sub. Unders, what are unders? That's the one thing that I actually did not look into with this fight.
The fight doesn't go the distance. It's like minus 240.
Yeah, under 1.5 plus 135, currently best available bet online. I could see it. What do you think, Liam?
Yeah, I don't hate that angle. It's tough, man. Like, I definitely lean towards the fight not to go, but like they're kind of pricing that more appropriately. The only concern I have there is just like the fight could get violent at any time with these two guys. I feel, even if Robocop gets takedowns early, the CLD fight, he took some damage in that fight, but he was able to get a lot of takedowns, and that's aged really well, right? He got a lot of takedowns, a lot of control, did exactly what he needed to do to win that fight. And we've also seen that Robocop, he's a dangerous finisher. He's a guy that can respond to adversity, right? Like, you hurt this guy, he can go out there and rally back and find a way to win. Chidi and Chikwani basically put a hole in the guy's face, and he was like, yeah, fuck you. Just got on top of him and beat him up anyway, right? So you see Robocop, dangerous guy. And I would say the things that stand out to me about this fight, the wrestling upside, I have to credit that. The fact that he's the younger guy with more pro experience, I have to credit that. Maybe he's artificially younger, right? Y'all know what I mean. If y'all seen some of the birth certificate controversies and stuff, maybe he's 45. But you just look at some of these guys and like, we got to go with the information we have. And Robocop listed as the younger guy, more pro experience, more wrestling and grappling upside in a huge way in this fight. And the other thing that I have to take into account here is, I've seen Roman Kopylov capitulate before, meaning like give up, basically things were going sideways and he gave up, right? I had Paulo Costa against him, right, on the money line at like plus 200 or something. I thought the price was off there. And if you ask me today, who's the better fighter? I don't know, 6 of one, half dozen of another. Like, they're like virtually similar in skill. But Paulo Costa hurt him early and, managed to fight better and won a fight where they were basically at skill parity and made it look kind of easy too. So for me, it just feels like Kopylov is a guy that is an underperformer. You just look at some of the losses he's had in the UFC. You look at the fact that, a guy like Kopylov, he doesn't really have a lot of wins that like, oh my, what a win. Like that win really jumps off the page. And for Robocop, he's got a lot of solid wins. He's got a lot of solid competition under his belt, and the losses, they're pretty justifiable, right? So my guy says Carl Roberson over Justin Jordan Williams. I mean, honestly, I don't know about that, bro. Like, go back and watch Jordan Williams against Ian Gary, who he touched up Ian Gary a little bit and was putting marks on his face and had his nose bleeding
He hurt
before
him.
Ian Gary put him all the way into, the third row of the depths of hell. But you just have to, give credit. Like, Williams wasn't a bad fighter. He just didn't have the greatest durability because the guy couldn't cut weight properly because he's a diabetic. And, like, again, just like shout out to him. He's like overcoming a lot to get in the cage. But you look at Robocop, his chin does kind of come and go with the wind. He's a little inconsistent there. But I just think skill-wise, presence in the cage, what he's done, what he's accomplished, who he's beaten, who he's fought. I feel like Robocop kind of checks more of the boxes for me, but it is a super volatile fight. So I lean towards violence in terms of my overall read. I have to pick Robocop here because, to your point, Wiz, like if he goes out there and takes this guy down, the one thing that Robocop does on the ground that other guys don't always do is he beats the shit out of people. He's just like a violent guy from every spot. So if he gets on top of guys, like he's trying to put elbows through their head, he's trying to really damage them as well. So for me, I feel like Kopylov, that's kind of a spot where you can get to him is putting him on the ground and beating him up. So anything you want to add here, my man?
No, not really. I feel like we've laid it out pretty well. I do expect the bum rush takedown here. I'd be very surprised.
Heck yeah, dude. Robocop takedown ladders. That might be the way to play it, But I will just say it used to be plus 950, plus 1,000 for this guy by sub, and now it's like plus 450. Bullish indicator. The book is like, this guy's finally going for it. Like
my brother, I think it might only need one. He might only need one.
There you go. One takedown and the fight's over shortly thereafter.
Could be. It really could be. Bro, Robo at least 41, bro, not 37, 38. Dude gotta be like 55 running for the president of the United States,
Dude, then he's going to go out there and get the Unk victory, for all the Brazilian Unks. That's going to be sick. But you look at this next fight, my man, Bo Nickal looking to avoid getting relegated to obscurity by the sport of jiu-jitsu. Last time out, Rene de Ridder, I got to say, there are very few fights come to mind as like sweeter victories than watching as I was right about Bo Nickal. I was like, this guy is delusional about the Paul Craig fight. This guy believes he's out there dominating. I was like, bro, you outlanded Paul Craig by 6 strikes. Like, let's just get serious. Like, it's all good. You could just say, hey, I'm a developmental fighter. I thought I was further along than I was. Let's tone it back a little bit. I'm not going to be a minus 1,000 favorite against Chimaev. Understood. Got it. Like, as soon as he said all that, it would have been, all right, it's all cool in the gang. Like, let's get off of Bo Nickal's back. But it feels like Bo Nickal kind of doubled down on the hate and, those kind of things. And going on the podcast, he did one with Ariel right after the fight where I was like, man, you know what? Maybe it sounds like this guy really ate the humble pie and he really got it. And then you hear him go back on his own podcast and he sounds like a completely different guy. And so I just have to be honest. I don't know what to expect from Bo Nickal, but I saw a few things that have given me pause about his career in MMA, right? Number one, the lack of fundamental development in some of these positions. I thought he looked very uncomfortable throughout the de Ridder fight, like in a lot of positions, right? If you're going to be a wrestler in MMA, you got to know what you want to do. Take the guy down. Where do I want to be? I want to hold him down from this position. I want to get back there. I'm going to throw elbows from here. You got to know what your game is. And I felt like he was not sure what he wanted to do out there. You look at the Paul Craig fight. He looked like he was neutered, right? He didn't know how to wrestle him. Okay, no problem. So instead, he did a low-tempo kickboxing match with the guy. And if Paul Craig threw one punch in a forward direction, it's a completely different fight. The guy was just throwing kicks and making it very competitive. And it's like Rodolfo Vieira, for all of his other faults, will throw punches in a forward direction. Like he's going to attempt to strike Bo Nickal with his fists, like that already is going to give him more of a chance than Paul. And it's just like, you watch how Bo Nickal strikes, and a lot of times it looks like very wild and very reckless. He is a natural athlete. I could say he's an athletic phenom from watching his wrestling days. That's why sometimes when he hits people, they get knocked the fuck out, even by really goofy looking punches. But he's not the most technical striker. He's a guy that's still learning on the job. And, I don't think he's going to easily out wrestle and out grapple Rodolfo Vieira. And like, if he goes out there and proves me wrong again, there'll be nothing but me taking my hat off to the guy and being like, wow, he's on a level I didn't expect. But the truth is, Adolfo is not one of these guys who came over from jiu-jitsu who's like pulling guard at the second they slap hands and, ready to sit on his butt. He's kind of one of these more domineering wrestling, get on top of you type of guys. And does that mean he's going to out wrestle Bo Nickal? No, but it might just mean that they can't wrestle each other very easily, right? And it's not like Bo Nickal super easily wrestled Cody Brundage and super easily. It's like some of these have been kind of ugly, like leg humping until he gets to the position he wants to choke the guy type of thing. And even some of the adjustments in the jiu-jitsu have looked very slow and, not great, right? The Jamie Pickett fight, it was painful to watch, right? Because Bo should just look smoother than that, against a guy he's way overmatched against physically and otherwise. So overall, I look at this fight and I say, like, I hear a lot of people saying it's a buy low spot on Nickal, easy bounce back spot. And maybe they're right, but I always try and just call it the exact way that I see it by doing my research and from my instincts. And my instinct on this fight was, man, Bo Nickal, it feels like everybody wanted to bet him at minus 1,000 every time, right? Against RDR, he was minus 400, and people were telling me, RDR, he's going to get clowned. He doesn't have a chance. Now he's minus 2XX or whatever. He's still, 70% favorite here. And I'm just like, what do we have that says he's a 70% favorite? Like the 15 minutes of what I believed was like nip tuck striking with Paul Craig that an honest judge could have called either way. Like, that's honestly how I felt about it. Like, if you want to say he landed a couple more power punches, so he deserved the rounds, okay. But it's like, he didn't go out there and bury Paul Craig and make it look obvious. He beats him by 7 strikes. Then he goes out there and against another guy who is clearly a talented fighter and a big guy, a big, scary clinch fighter in RDR, but a human being, right? A guy that could lose fights too, a guy that's lost before, a guy that's lost since. It's like that guy went out there and made Bo look bad in some spots and like kind of, checked him. Like, does he want to be there? Some guys are willing to take shots and keep going. Adolfo Vieira got his ass whooped by Chris Curtis for some parts of the fight. Kept pushing forward, kept shooting takedowns, kept looking for strikes that would win him the fight. Did he win? No. Did he make an honest account of himself for 15 minutes? Yes. So we know Adolfo can fight for 15 minutes. We know he can fight hard. We know he can push through adversity. And we know he's a dangerous submission threat. And this guy, Bo Nickal, he didn't get submitted against RDR, but when he was on his back, he was getting held down there. He was getting real uncomfortable in that bottom position. When he went to pull guillotine, he didn't have anything. So you just look at some of these spots and you say, Bo Nickal, clearly an athletic freak, clearly has some real skills, but he is not a comfortable, competent, put-together fighter. And Adolfo Vieira has way more cage time. He is good at some of the things that Bo Nickal would want to try and leverage over somebody. So it just feels to me like this is going to be a awkward, ugly-looking fight where Adolfo Vieira might just end up getting his hand raised. So, for me, it feels like a dog or pass. And, the market, I do think has kind of reflected that, right? Like, I think Bo Nickal is a much more popular market commodity than Adolfo Vieira, but Adolfo Vieira is down to like plus 185 in this market. So, I think that does speak volumes to the fact that there's some sharp dollars behind him. What do you think?
I think my mind is a little bit tainted on this fight. I'm going to be honest. And watching the tape, I tend to think this is a close fight. But just like in the past, I have seen footage of Adolfo Vieira in the gym against like different guys. And I've seen how he reacts to different things in different positions. And it leaves a little bit to be desired. I can't get into that too much. Skill for skill here, it's going to be tough backing a guy like Bo Nickal going up against Adolfo because of the jiu-jitsu background. Yes, Bo Nickal is positionally dominant when it comes to his wrestling, but it's one thing to be positionally dominant and, driving the downward force here, the wrestling. Liam, you know a little bit more or a lot bit more than I do about this stuff. This is your world. I'm the striker here. I just think that Rodolfo Vieira is going to be able to stay safe in those positions. Where Bo is going to be effective the most is going to be ground and pound. He's not going to want to try and scramble at all. He wants to go lock down here and inflict as much damage from the top position as much as he can, because on the feet, even though Rodolfo's not a dangerous striker, Rodolfo is not just serviceable, his striking's okay. It's polished now. He's able to pump out the jab effectively. Doesn't have the most powerful right cross at all, but I do think that he'll be able to touch up Bo Nickal on the feet as many times as he wants, because he goes to the body and then he goes to the head with the jab and back and forth. Bo Nickal is not a high-level striker. He's not someone that will be using feints a lot to deter the movement of Rodolfo Vieira. He's not going to effectively use angles and cutting off the cage, because he's just not that seasoned in the striking department. So I think if he wants his best chance of winning this fight, it's going to be taking Rodolfo down and finding a position where he can stay safe while landing effective elbows and ground and pound. Rodolfo Vieira, if he wants to win this fight, it's going to be keeping it standing, pumping out the jab, and effectively defending the takedowns and landing in top position himself. I think if top position is presented to Rodolfo Vieira, he potentially could finish this fight. So I'm looking at Rodolfo Vieira by knockout specifically here. I do need to do a little bit more tape on it.
Fair play, my man. Yeah, I think when I'm looking at this fight, it just doesn't feel to me like a layup for Bo. And, you know, I do see some people saying like they think Bo can easily out wrestle him. Maybe, you know, and again, I'll eat my words if I'm wrong here, right? I really respect Bo as a wrestler. He's very good at wrestling. But one thing that you need in order to wrestle well is the belief that you can get the takedown and that you want it, right? And like, I feel like Bo Nickal didn't shoot against Paul Craig because he didn't want the takedown. And I feel like he was very indecisive about whether he wanted to shoot on RDR or not. You know, his corner was telling him, shoot, shoot, shoot. They wanted him to shoot, and he didn't really want to. And I could just tell you guys, when you're out there in a jiu-jitsu context with somebody who's really good at jiu-jitsu and you know how to wrestle and you keep moving into them and they keep trying to lock you up and stuff, you're like, maybe I should just not do that, right? And I do think that that's what Bo Nickal got. He got a little bit of buyer's remorse. Khamzat Chimaev, guys, nobody's above it, right? Took down Gilbert Burns, got in that guard for about 1 second. And he was like, you know what, fuck this. I don't need this shit in my life. I'm just getting back up. Like, let's fight on the feet instead. And I feel like for Bo, that's the kind of thing here. Like, yeah, maybe he could take down Adolfo. I'll just point you guys back to the Petrosky fight. Petrosky is a good wrestler. He's not on Bo's level, but he's a very good wrestler, and he's also a very credentialed jiu-jitsu player. And he took down Vieira for about 0.1 seconds. Like, Vieira literally just like sprung back up to his feet. For a guy who's built like a wall of muscle, he's much more nimble and athletic than he looks. And he also actually understands the jiu-jitsu game really well. So I don't think he's just going to settle on his back if Bo gets on top. Like, I think he will try to be clever and do things like deep half and like enter in on legs and stuff and make Bo go, fuck this, and get back up to the feet. So I just feel like Rodolfo, very well seasoned on the ground. He's not a bottom player by choice, right? Like, he's not going to go to the bottom and play there, but he is a guy that is competent everywhere, is how I would describe him. So I would be surprised if Adolfo just got completely bitched on the mat. But again, I will come here and own my words if I'm wrong. I think this is a well-matched card. I think we're going to learn a lot about both guys, but I've seen Bo Nickal in the interim taking, you know, wrestling matches with guys and, you know, maybe getting a foot back in that world, because these days in America, you can make money being a wrestler in ways that you couldn't in days of old, right? And, you know, same thing in jiu-jitsu, and these things, guys are trying to make money in their own sport, and that's a blessing, right? It's a good thing, but it's also maybe something that will hold guys back from their full potential in MMA. Like, if Bo Nickal needed this for everything, maybe all his focus and attention goes to what? MMA, but instead the guy's got a fallback plan. He's got another option. And by the way, instead of MMA where, you know, he's a villain and people don't like him because he came in with a big ego and, you know, was smelling his own farts and things like that, in the world of wrestling, he's still a very well-respected guy that a lot of people like. So I think that, you know, Bo Nickal is just a guy that I don't know how all in he is on his MMA career at this point, because one loss like that derails your hype can be what makes or breaks you, right? And I think we're now in we were in the fuck around stage before, right? Now we're in the finding out stage, right? How does it go from here? Because he ate that slice of humble pie willingly or unwillingly. RDR was serving one dish that night. So I just feel like now we're going to find out a lot about Bo Nickal and how he responds to that adversity of coming back from a loss. Adolfo Vieira, been there, done that, right? The embarrassing loss against Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, not so embarrassing now, right? Everybody else that fought the guy was like, yeah, fuck, maybe that wasn't so bad. And meanwhile, you look at what has happened since. Nobody's put Vieira away since that fight, right? Vieira's gone out there and fought honest, win, lose, or draw. So I just feel like he's going to go out there and do the same here. All right, man. We are on to the main card in earnest. Your guy, Benny. I normally give people that miss weight a lot of grief on this show, but, you know, a guy who's fought this many times in the UFC, a guy who's been a pretty consummate professional, I got to say, still love for Benny Dariush, right? You got to give love to the OG. He's 38. He's always had a huge body for this lightweight division. It's very difficult for him to make the weight, especially as you get older, guys. Cutting weight, less forgiving. The older you get, the more your body's like, no, don't do this to me. Please stop. And it just starts shutting down on you, right? Benny didn't even try and make it. You know, after he stepped on the scale, he basically knew, like, I can't. Like, if I try and make this weight, I'm going to hurt myself. I'm going to, you know, be a danger to myself. This fight might get canceled type of thing. So, you know, Benny missed the weight here. Going to give up a percentage of the purse on that. You know, he's given up 10 years in age as well. So there's a lot working against him here. The size, you know, BSD, a big lightweight, but ultimately two very skilled fighters here, two guys who are in the top of this lightweight heap and looking to make a statement. You know, in the case of Benny, he's looking to stick around. In the case of BSD, you know, looking to reestablish himself. He just came off the best performance of his career in the UFC, you know, dominated Mauricio Rufy, you know, ran him pillar to post, you know, beat him up in Paris, got it, you know, crowd support behind him, everything like that. So I feel like BSD has kind of shown what we've known about him. He's a dangerous guy, a powerful guy, you know, comes forward, pushes the action, fights at a high pace, relentless, aggressive, you know, and quite durable, right? He's a guy that, can he be hurt? Can he be clipped? Can he be buzzed? Sure. Putting him away, good luck. You know, it's very hard. You got to bring a lunch, right? Dustin Poirier, ask him if that fight was easy. You know, he won the fight. You know, he did what he needed to do, but he was doing rescue breaths at the end of that fight because BSD made him fight hard for the whole length of the fight, you know, against a guy like Moicano. Moicano got to a good position early. He busted him up with the ground and pound. It was so smart for Moicano. But you saw BSD say, you know what, my eyes are fucked. I can't see, but I'm coming after you, man. I'm swinging everything. I'm getting back in your face. He is a soldier to his core. The guy fights like a soldier, you know, death before dishonor. Dustin Poirier had to kill the man. You know, you just look at how he fights. And on the other side, you know, I think Beneil, super tough, super game, you know, but that chin has been had a number of times. You know, you just look back through the career, you know, he's been knocked out a number of times in the UFC. He's been knocked down 7 times, I believe, in his UFC career. You know, he's been hurt, rocked, and wobbled way more times than that. You know, it doesn't always show up in the numbers, but I'll point you guys back to the Drakkar close fight where it looked like they were fighting on ice skates, and, you know, Drakkar was the one that fell over first there, but, you know, Benny looked like he was ready to go. Not 20 seconds before that finish materialized. So you look at how these two guys fight, I feel like it's car crash potential written all over it. But I will just say, man, for me, if you're getting in a car crash, you know, you want the guy who's a little more durable. That's the way I see it. So for me, give me the guy who's a little younger, a little closer to their, you know, athletic prime, a little more durable, but nothing but love and respect for Benny. You know, he's a great fighter. He's been putting in his time for a long time, but I feel like his time may have come and passed. What do you think?
Yeah, shout out to Benny, man. Benny used to be one of my coaches long time ago when I was first starting out in MMA and taught me a lot. So shout out to him, and I wish him well here. Very tough fight. Very tough fight, in my opinion here. Just at this stage of his career specifically. I think it would have been different and a lot closer if Benny was a lot younger and obviously durability was still there. But we can only talk about the present right now. And in the grappling and the wrestling, sure, I do think that Benoit will be the more powerful guy, and he's probably going to be the guy taking Benny down if he wants to. But I think that's going to be a point of emphasis to avoid here, because when I say Beneil Dariush is legit grappler, this guy is legit grappler. I've seen him tap out everybody in the gym, every single fighter. Your favorite fighter's favorite fighter, I've seen it happen. So on the mat, you don't want anything to do with this guy, and I'm surprised that Moicano didn't continue the aggression and finish him in that fight. He dropped him bad in the first round. That wasn't a good look. And he came back and ended up winning the fight, toughed it out, showed that there is the cardio is still there, and Moicano's cardio wasn't all there, and he dominated him in that fight after. So I just don't think he's going to be able to do that against a guy as physically strong as Benoit Saint-Denis, who the UFC thought the world of, throwing him in against Dustin Poirier as well early on in his career, without really proving too much. Had staph infection there, gassed himself out, and this was in the second round while he was still using the same crazy pace, looked slow, stuck in mud, and got caught there. Still pushed a heavy pace. I can only imagine like what he's going to do here, specifically against an older fighter like Benny, who has been paced before in a similar manner. I just think that in the striking, the power more so than the skill is what's going to matter here, because on the skill side, it's all Benny. Benoit Saint-Denis is not, I'm not saying that he's not a skilled striker, but if he lands a few of those power punches on Benny, I just do not know how that chin's holding up. I think the power on the Denis side is going to be too much for Benny to withstand. I think at least early on, if he's able to hold on to him and latch onto him as he gets hurt, then cool, he can stay safe, because Saint-Denis, yes, has the wrestling and some jiu-jitsu. I don't regard his jiu-jitsu all that highly as of yet. I need to see a little bit more against some more high-level guys. But yeah, give me BSD here. I think he wins by knockout. I hope he doesn't. I'm really rooting for Benny. But yeah, give me BSD here. He's going to go ahead and hit us with another one of those sellies. Going to go with the little pistol. Pop, pop. Grab the pistol right here. Pop. Hope not, though.
Yeah, I'm going to go BSD based on, the power, the durability, his relentless pressure, his willingness to come forward and get aggressive. But I will also acknowledge Benny, that counter left hand that he throws like a slow moving overhand softball pitch. When he lands that thing, man, it sounds like a gunshot went off. Benny still packs a punch, So Benil and BSD, they both got their guns just in different ways, right? And, also I do agree with the sentiments that like Beneil Dariush, his grappling is fucking sensational. So you have to give him credit there. Like you do not want to mix it up there. I feel like if I'm BSD's coaches, I'm like, bro, do not wrestle this guy. Do not grapple this guy. If anything, cage push him. Just like push him into the cage, knee him, elbow him, beat him up, and then get space and throw heavy hands at his head, neck, and chest. Kick him as hard as you can. That, I think, is the game plan here that gets him the win. But I will also say, easier said than done, right? Benny is a hard win to get, but I also feel like BSD, timing is everything in mixed martial arts, and way younger, bigger guy, super motivated with the right team, the right gym, getting the right momentum going. And I just feel like Benny is a little bit past his prime. So that's the way I see it going down. All right, man. Next up, we've got one that we are in violent agreement on. I'll let you start us off, my man. We got the nightmare, Carlos Prates, looking to take a big step forward here against one of the highlights of the show. We were big Leon Edwards truthers before it was, relevant, right? When you got those big wins for us as a dog against Usman. But since then, he's had a little bit of a falling off, right? A little bit of a coming back down to earth, a regression to the mean, so to speak. What do you think about this fight, my man? Does Rocky have one more in the storybook, or is Carlos Prates going to put him on the highlight reel?
This is where I talk. This is where I speak. This is my fight. I'm a huge Leon Edwards fan. I'm a huge Prates fan, so no bias. I think I've modeled a lot of my game around Leon Edwards' just attributes physically, and then Prates staying long. I like a lot of these rangier strikers. And this fight specifically, though, we look at both guys, and there's one glaring thing to me is as you look at the record of Leon Edwards, and the question comes up as to when was the last time he faced a really high-level striker or someone that has that crazy technical ability paired with the knockout power, and you just don't really see it. You don't really see it. I mean, Donald Cerrone is maybe the last person. because he fought him in 2019 when Cerrone was still Cerrone. But then you look at the record, Rafael Dos Anjos, not really a power puncher, Gunnar Nelson, Bilal Muhammad, Nate Diaz, Kamaru Usman, Colby, Bilal, Sean Brady. And none of these guys are power punchers that can keep their range, that have multiple weapons, multiple feints that open up 2 to 3 different counter strikes. It's a little bit difficult to face guys like this when you haven't really faced a good striker, let alone B, a striker that's going to mix all of that in. I think Leon is in some trouble here. I'm not saying he's completely out of it, but Carlos Prates is someone who knows how to keep his range well. When he unloads that right hand, it's going straight to the chin. It's never really looping, which is what I like. And the one strike that I really think is going to be the difference maker here is going to be the step-in knee for Prates. He's finished a lot of guys to the body with that knee, and Leon Edwards leaves his midsection wide open. His hands are usually like right up here. And anytime someone goes in with a jab, his hands stick up a little bit higher. If you throw more than one punch at Leon Edwards, you're going to expose his midsection. You're going to be able to land knees or land body shots, whatever you want, to the midsection. And I think Prates at some point is going to be able to recognize that and time something there. If not, he can take it to the clinch. Prates is the better clinch fighter, and same thing with the knees and the elbows there. I think he can get Leon out, if not just severely hurt him and cruise from there, to be honest. If you're getting outstruck in certain rounds against Bilal Muhammad, that could be due to the wrestling fear and the wrestling threat. So I'm going to cut him some slack there, but still not the best look to have in a fight. Give me Carlos Prates, man. I think he knocks out Leon Edwards within 2 rounds. And Gamble Singh, I have to just highlight this. Disagree on Leon being the better fighter in the stand-up specifically.
Yeah, I think when you look at this fight, like, Leon is not a bad striker, right? He's clearly a very good striker, but he's also a guy that, can be a little bit low volume, can be very measured, doesn't really throw a ton out there, kind of needs another guy to, give him opportunities, give him lanes, right? He's a guy that he's had a lot of opportunities to feast on wrestlers that want to, shoot takedowns, and they're a little bit more predictable and kind of give him, a feel for what he wants. And a lot of other times, if you look in the past, how he used to win his fights when he would go against guys that wanted to strike and mix it up with him, he would wrestle, he would grapple, he'd take the back, he would mix in different positions, and, he would clinch, right? He would push guys into the fence. I do think, Francois just said it, and I agree. If Leon wrestles, he has a chance. That being said, I'm on Prates. I kind of see it the same way, like, I am going to wait and see what the Leon takedown props open up at. I'm going to wait and see, what the final line I can get on a Leon sub is or something. Like, if I can get 30-1 on Leon sub, might have to hold my nose and click that. I think I bet Leon by sub against Kamaru Usman when I bet him on the money line there. And he did flat back Kamaru Usman into the full mount in the first round. He did take Kamaru Usman's back in that fight. So when you look at Leon, like, you don't want to disrespect the guy who was a champion, who got to the top. Like, he clearly has skills. The problem is, the guy he's fighting also has skills. The guy he's fighting is really hungry. The guy he's fighting has a ton of experience outside the UFC. And now he's also starting to get that experience in the UFC, fighting 5 rounds with Ian Gary. He's positioned himself as a guy who really wants this step up in competition. And meanwhile, Leon, he went from being the guy to being the guy who lost to, Bilal Muhammad, who was widely mocked, who was widely ridiculed, right? Boring fighter. This guy sucks. And then he goes out there and beats you. That'll do a little bit of a number on your confidence, right? When everybody's saying, fuck you, you blew up my parlay, bro, we thought you were good. What happened? Why can't you fight? And he said, hey, guys, it was this time in the morning. It was this problem. Don't worry. Next time out, we're going to represent. We're going to get it done. We're going to do it at home. And then he goes out there and he fights, a guy in Sean Brady who kind of ran him for his lunch money, to beat him every which way but loose, kind of emasculated him out there, embarrassed him, beat him up, mugged him, right? It was simply not a competitive fight for large portions. And at the end, it was Sean Brady saying, do you want to say uncle? And he said yes. So it just seemed like Leon, maybe wasn't the same guy, maybe didn't have the same fire, right? His coaches were trying to motivate and fire him up in the corner, which I've said before, even though I bet Leon, even though he won me that bet, like if your coach is having to get in your face and convince you that you should still want to win the contest, that's a red flag for me, right? I don't like to see that, right? We've seen a lot of other guys, capitulate, quit on the stool, things like that. After that kind of conversation with their coach is seeing huge red flags and trying to get their athlete not to give it up, not to throw it in. And Leon's corner is basically pleading with him between every round. Like, hey, man, would you fight? Would you please do something? Would you try something on offense? Would you try not to get taken down? Would you change something about the game plan? There's just a lot of things that for me feel like, Leon needs to be talked into doing a lot now. I don't know that he wants to be out there as much as he used to. I don't know that he's as aggressive. Like once you've tasted the victory, once you've tasted the championship, everything else doesn't taste quite as sweet, and I feel like Leon kind of did what he set out to do, and I haven't seen the same fire since. You lose a couple fights, people start telling you you never were who you thought you were. Maybe that fires him back up. Maybe he goes out there and gets it going. But I just feel like Prates, he doesn't need anybody to tell him he needs to go win the fight. He doesn't need anybody to tell him, like, hey, buddy, come on, like, go out there and try, bro. Come on, please, get up. Come on, wake up, man. Keep trying. Like, I feel like Prates knows I can go forward, throw, attack, and kill anybody in this division, right? Will I? I don't know, right? It's a two-man sport. It's going to be tough. These are tough fighters. These are world-class guys. But Prates believes he could beat anybody. He fights like that, and he's shown that in every fight in the UFC that he's had so far. And he's also shown in his fights pre-UFC one of the best highlight reels in the sport, period. Pick a weight class. Pick a guy. Pick a style. I don't care. Carlos Prates, he can go highlight reel, bar for bar with anybody in the game. And so you look at a guy like Leon Edwards, they used to struggle to put together a highlight reel for this guy. Right? It was one knockout over Sabata or whoever in like 8 seconds, and then it was Leon like landing a 1-2 and they'd cut away because every fight went to decision. Every fight, you have to out wrestle the guy just by a hair. And I feel like right now the bill's going to come due. And I feel like Carlos Prates is a nightmare matchup for a lot of guys at welterweight. I feel like he's a nightmare for Leon. So give me Carlos Prates to go out there, get the win and get the finish. But I will just say, if you like the Leon side, the way I'd look to invest, the takedowns, I'd potentially consider, that submission prop as well at a big number. So should be, an interesting scrap. Respect to both guys, but I think Carlos Prates is, who he says he is. I think he's going to go out there and finish this guy. Oh, man, it's moving night in the welterweight division. Wiz, we got another one, another great fight. And I must admit, this is another one of those fights where, pre-tape, pre-research, my gut was saying Michael Morales, man, like he's so big, he's so athletic, he's so long, he hits like a truck. He's got a ton of momentum. He's got the judo background. He's got the, wrestling background. Like there's a lot to like about this guy. And I still feel that way. But I just think watching back the tape, watching back where he's at, I feel like this is the fight where he might have to lose this fight to grow as a fighter and come back a whole new, better guy, right? And maybe he, avoids that first L. Maybe he doesn't have to take it now, but just looking at the way that Michael Morales has had a couple fights in the past where, an Adam Fugit goes out there, takes him down early on in the fight when they're both fresh, gets onto the top position. He's not able to easily clear those positions. Adam Fugit threatened the guard pass. He didn't get it. He threatened it, right? A few times, right? And you just look at Sean Brady. He ain't threatening the guard pass, my brother. He's taking that, right? When he gets to the top position, he is a smooth operator. He's a very, very physical force. And the other thing I will note is, like, again, I went back into this tape. I thought Michael Morales had a championship ceiling before the Magny fight, before those other. I was talking about it, right? And when he finished Magny, it was super impressive. But you go back and rewatch the fight. Magny runs the guy into the fence. Magny switches, levels, goes to the hips. Y'all know Neil Magny, right? Like, for all the things Neil Magny does really well, lifting weights maybe is not going to be at the top of the priority list, right? Like, maybe Neil Magny is not going to be a bodybuilder or a physique competition guy, right? Like, and maybe he's not going to lift double legs like it's like easy money, like pick guys up, turn them sideways off the fence. But he had a good angle, right? And if you've ever seen a Sean Brady takedown, a lot of times there you pressed into the fence, he wraps you up around the hips, and then it's pick you up easily, turn you sideways, and you're going for a ride, And I just feel like I saw enough on the tape that told me unless Morales has made major improvements in the wrestling and the grappling, that Sean Brady should have huge opportunities to take him down in this fight. Now, the things that are dangerous here, Sean Brady didn't get the takedowns going against Bilal Muhammad, and he fell apart. And you have to just call a spade a spade. Again, that was a fight where everything fell apart for him when one thing wasn't going right. And that's a big one thing to not be going right, but it was a problem. And Bilal hit him with hips. He fed him hips. He was very athletic. He knew what was coming. But the other thing is, Bilal was very insistent on hitting him with hips, and Michael Morales is kind of a guy that shows his back a little bit more. He kind of is willing to accept a little more of that pressure. And that just doesn't seem like it translates super well against a guy like Brady. So maybe Morales is going to come in super well prepared, super schooled for this, approach. He's going to have better takedown defense. He's going to have better footwork, better angles. He's going to use all the geography in the big cage. That's how he wins this fight, in my view. Use the space, keep this guy away from you, touch him hard, use your 7-inch reach advantage, and finish him, knock him out. I just think that when I do the research, when I dig into the tape, I see Sean Brady getting takedowns in this fight, and I don't know how the top game is going to look in relation to Michael Morales. I do think there will be 1 or 2 times he does the Derek Lewis, just fucking explodes back up to his feet because he's a freak athlete. But you can only do that a couple times, right? You can't do that all day. And Sean Brady can go back to the takedown and sink you back to the ground and go back to his lock and go back to his wrist control and go back to putting you in the series over and over again. So if Sean Brady gets into his rhythm, I think he's going to win the fight and do so in dominant fashion. If he's not able to get into his rhythm, I think he's going to get knocked out. So that's the way I see it going down. For me, the sides in this fight, as I see it, again, this is one where I did change my mind over the course of fight week, but it would be Sean Brady and the under. I say that because I feel like either Sean Brady wins the fight and cashes the under, or Sean Brady loses the fight and the under cashes. That's kind of the way I see it. So, yeah, I feel like Morales, super good fighter, going to win real important, meaningful fights in the UFC. But if there was ever a time where he has to take a little bit of that learning lesson, I feel like this could be one of them, because Sean is a very niche style, right? He has a winning style, a winning game plan that he brings to the UFC, and not a lot of guys can replicate it in the training room, right? Like, there are other guys that can wrestle a little bit. There are other guys that can grapple a little bit, but he is a very heavy top player. All the guys in this gym have talked about it. Craig Jones and these other guys have talked about when he's on top, very solid base, hard to move. And if he's able to hold this guy down, it could ask some real questions about Morales and how he does when he's the nail. Because in a lot of his fights, he's been able to be a hammer, and he hasn't been afraid of these guys at all and the offense they bring. I think you have to respect Sean Brady's offense no matter who you are, because if you don't, you end up like Leon, really tired, exhausted, ready to go home and tapping. So, I feel like Sean Brady, dangerous guy, and, earned his keep, fought high-level competition, but if I was his manager, I wouldn't have taken this fight, man. I would have looked for a fucking different opportunity because Morales is a freak. What do you think?
Yeah, for me, this fight is a pass, man. I was flip-flopping back and forth between the Brady side and thinking he's going to get the takedowns. And, I think if he gets the takedowns, this fight is his to lose. And then on the other hand, I've also seen tape where Michael Morales is, strong enough to keep this fight upright, using his background in the judo and wrestling to serve him right, keep this upright, and find a knockout against Sean Brady. I think it's very 50-50 in that realm. As you mentioned, I'm not really going to go too deep into this because you mentioned all the points I really wanted to mention, to be honest. Very binary fight, in my opinion. We've seen Brady go out there and looks very almost unfazed in the striking when he gets hit, and you just don't want that. You don't want to see a guy get hit repetitively over and over again, and he's still in front of you, but is slowly wilting away. And against a guy like Michael Morales, who's going to have about 7 inches of reach on him, no good. The distance he's going to have to cover in order to get in onto the legs of Michael Morales is let alone going to be too much here. He's going to have to be chasing Morales around the cage. But I think Morales is going to be the one that's applying the pressure here. I'm slowly talking myself into a Morales side here. Am I betting this fight at all? Hell no, because even if the fighter that you pick to win this fight is, winning, you're entering round 3, I think it really takes one mistake from either guy to get put out, whether it's by submission or whether it's by knockout. All it takes is one mistake here, because both guys are that good in their respective aspect and their respective abilities when it comes to mixed martial arts. I lean more towards the Michael Morales side. I think he gets it done here. I think he knocks Sean Brady out. And that's just the striker in me seeing it and just watching the tape, noticing how Michael Morales defends takedowns. And physically, he will have the advantage when it comes to that specific skill. Using your strength and using your size when it comes to takedown defense is very opportune when you're the bigger guy, the much bigger guy here. You'll have some sort of advantage more often than not, especially when you look as physically strong as Morales too. Not saying that Brady isn't, but if you're able to dig underhooks pretty quick against Brady, I think you'll be fine. So give me Michael Morales by knockout, but not confident at all. One of my favorite fights on the card.
Me too, man. I ended up going with Brady, but early in the week I was leaning towards the Morales side. So clearly very well matched fight, very competitive. But the tape, I felt like Brady just has a lot of really good grappling skills and wrestling skills that could test some of what Morales has shown weaknesses in. But when you're young, when you're sprightly, when you're athletic, you can make big improvements fight over fight. So this is everything to play for here for Michael Morales. But I think right now he's got one more going back to the drawing board experience, get that first loss, all the pressure's off you, and he's going to go on a huge run after that. I feel like Sean Brady, win now situation, go out there, get the dub by any means necessary, sub or decision for the Irish-American king, Sean Brady. Let's go. All right, man. It takes us to the co-main event of the evening. We got the ladies fighting. We got Valentina Shevchenko, the Bullet. We got Zhang Weili, Magnum Zhang Weili. Brother, I got to be honest. I'm going to have you start us off here because I have been one of the worst Zhang Weili bettors, I think, maybe ever in human history, right? I cannot get a Zhang Weili fight to save my life from a betting standpoint. So a lot of what I've done, I think I only hit Zhang Weili and Carlos Esparza ends by submission. I think that is the one play I ever hit. And it was big plus money. But aside from that, man, I have just been brick. Is she going to beat Nama Yunus? No. Is she going to beat her the next time? No. I was there wrong side both times. I just feel like maybe I've been too optimistic on her in the past. Then I've been too pessimistic on her in recent years. Now maybe I'm overcorrecting the steering wheel again, but I have been on the fade Valentina Shevchenko world tour. I'm kidding, of course, but to quote my guy, Dan Levy, in the past, and now you've got another champion, another high quality fighter, plus 110. What do you think about this one, my man? Who gets it done? Champion versus champion. You got a good fighter in your pick no matter what, right?
That's for sure. Looking at this fight, I really feel like both of these ladies excel at every aspect of mixed martial arts, and they're true representatives of pioneers for the women's side, let alone, but also just pioneers for the sport. They've been champions respectively during their stints for a long, long time. I think the reason why the line slightly favors Valentina here is because, she's not the one moving up a weight class. It's Weili that's moving up a weight class. I think this is a razor thin margins kind of fight where both ladies will have their moments. It just depends on who will have more of those moments. I can't get behind a Weili bet here just because I've never seen her really compete against someone this high level at this weight class, let alone. So I'm going to have to pick Valentina. I think she's going to be the faster fighter at the weight class. That's for sure. Is she going to mix up the wrestling is my big question. Because if she mixes up the wrestling, I think that gives Weili a little bit more of an opportunity to use the extra weight that she's put on this camp or in the past year leading up to this camp. It's a big question mark in my brain, and I can't really seem to solve it no matter how much I tape it. So for me, this is a complete pass. I'm predicting Valentina to win just due to being the lady that's been in the weight class a lot longer and just being used to this weight cut.
Yeah, man, at the risk of being wrong about Zhang Weili for like the fucking 50th time, like I think Zhang Weili wins the fight here. I do think it's a very competitive fight, but here's the reason I ultimately went with Zhang Weili. Firstly, I think that when you look at finishing equity in this fight, I think the more, knockout equity, I probably give to Valentina just because she's a little bit bigger and she does have like flashy head kick type offense. And when you've seen Zhang Weili stunned in her career, it's been from head kicks, right? Primarily, right? Like things that she didn't see that like caught her upside the head. That's how you catch somebody like this. And, I think Valentina, that's what her bread and butter is as a striker. Making people look bad is when they don't see it coming, they walk onto a big head kick. So that I think is her upside in terms of finishing. Outside of that, I'd be very surprised if she finished the fight, right? Meanwhile, on the other side, Zhang Weili, she's extremely aggressive as a submission grappler. I think technically still leaves a little bit to be desired, but I also think she's showing real improvements fight over fight in terms of her skills. I don't think that's really true for Shevchenko. Shevchenko's just been very high level for a long time. I think she's getting slightly worse fight over fight. I think her decision-making is something that in some fights looks really excellent and in other fights leaves a little bit to be desired. So for Zhang Weili, I think you could say some of the same criticisms, right? I feel like these women are very similar. Obviously Valentina's a slight bit bigger. That's an advantage for her. But I think that Nate makes a great point in the chat. Zhang fights at a higher pace than most of the girls that Val has fought. That's true. She's also more physical and more determined, more violent than a lot of those girls that she's fought, in my opinion. But another thing to mention, Valentina Shevchenko has been taken down in each of her last 3 fights. She's been taken down, I want to say 6 times in her last 5 fights. She gets taken down. She's given up multiple takedowns to Talia Santos. She gave up a bunch of control time to Talia Santos, nearly got submitted as well by a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt, by a girl who was 4-3 in the UFC, like didn't work out, right? Like you just look at Valentina has had some sketchy, weird moments against Alexa Grasso multiple times now. And Alexa Grasso, not known for her physicality, not known for being a supreme grappler with all these wins by submission. It's like, at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, does Valentina Shevchenko have a slight deficiency on the mat? You look at the fight she had with Juliana Pena, it looked very uncomfortable for her in that fight until she got the finish. And, I feel like Shevchenko does not like when she's being bullied, does not like when somebody's getting on top of her, does not like when somebody's holding on to her and muscling her about. And I do feel like Zhang Weili has opportunities to do that. Zhang Weili has been racking up takedowns, dude. 13 takedowns for her last 3 fights. Like, she goes out there, gets after people, puts them on the ground, takes them down multiple times. So, again, I feel like it's a super honest fight. I feel like it's probably going to go 25 minutes more often than not. And if that's the case, it's probably going to be very close. And whoever gets more takedowns, whoever gets a little more control time, might end up winning it. And I just feel like I would not put it past Zhang Weili to do that, right? Like, I feel like watching how Zhang Weili gets takedowns, she can go out there and trip people. She can go out there and maneuver them and kind of interrupt their feet. And Valentina Shevchenko, need I remind people, guys, got taken down and held down flat on her back by Jennifer Maia, who was 6-6 in the UFC and cut from the promotion. So again, like, it's not one girl, it's not 2 girls, it's maybe 5 or 7 girls that have like challenged Valentina on the mat with the physicality. I believe Manon Ferro had 7+ minutes of control time with a broken nose. So I just look at Zhang Weili and say, is she going to fight hard for your dollar? Yes. Is she going to go out there and pursue, in my opinion, the path that is most likely to lead to a victory, which is takedowns and getting on top? I do think she's going to pursue that. So for those reasons, I think she's the pick, but I think it's a super hard fight to call. And like a lot of fights on this card, super well matched, right? Like these are two championship caliber athletes, two very high level women, two very skilled competitors. It's probably a game of inches here. Give me Zhang Weili because I think she's slightly closer to her athletic prime. And I think she's a gamer and really wants to win and needs a legacy-defining win. And I think Valentina Shevchenko has done everything there is to do in this game 3 times over. She's like speed running, going back through and trying to, relap a division and all this stuff. And I just don't think it's easy to do. There was a time she went on a huge win streak in title fights in the UFC, and Grasso interrupted all that, kind of delayed her career. And now she got back the title. She did everything she wanted to. What left is there to prove for Shevchenko? She wins this one, you just say, fuck, man, maybe she really is the GOAT in this women's shit. But overall, I've seen her lose and almost lose to lesser foes. I thought I got jobbed blind on Talia Santos. That's the truth. I had Talia Santos plus 400 there. So maybe it's still sour grapes from all those years back. But for me, man, hesitantly, probably wrong again, picking Zhang Weili. I think she gets the job done in this fight. So that was my pick, man. Hesitant, but there it is.
Very
Which
close
brings
fight.
of course. Oh no, please go ahead, man.
No, I was like, very close fight. It's very hard to call that last one, and I'm excited to watch it. Don't get me wrong. I think this is going to be another instant classic, similar to why am I drawing? It's the Joanna versus where her head was inflating. Who was she fighting? I forget.
Oh, good, G. But that takes us, my man, to the main event of the evening, the one we've all been waiting for. The welterweight division will get a potentially new king in Islam Makhachev if he's able to match Anderson Silva. 16 wins in a row in the UFC. It would be a very impressive feat for Islam, and he has to do it up a weight class if he wants to get it done. Jack Della Maddalena claimed the title in his last fight, beat Bilal Muhammad, ran his total up to 8-0 in the UFC. He's got a bunch of knockouts on his resume, proven he can go out there and win decisions, proven he can go out there and do it over 5 rounds. So the guy's got skills. The other thing that's super important coming into this fight is he's not a capitulator, right? Like, you're going to have to choke this man to sleep. You're going to have to really break this man in ways that are incomprehensible because he does not seem to register damage. He does not seem to have any kind of self-preservation streak. And he is a guy that's willing to eat, attempt at a choke or whatever to get back up to his feet. So the problem is against a guy like Islam, if you make one mistake, if you leave your neck hanging out there, you leave an arm hanging out there, any of these things, it could be lights out. It could be game over. We've seen Volkanovski, a smaller guy, but a very talented guy, prove that Islam is a human being. You fight this guy, you make him work, you use some skills, you have a baseline of understanding of how he's going to attack you in the grappling and elsewhere, and you attack back and you don't settle and you go create pressure and you move forward. Dude, in round 5, Islam was tired there, and Islam was looking like he was feeling sorry for himself and he was laying flat on his back. And Volk is not the heaviest handed guy. He's not the guy that goes out there and necessarily gets finishes or creates huge damage on guys. Jack is, Jack is a guy that can bust you up. He can leave damaging shots on you. He can touch you to the body, the head, and the leg. He can put a knee on you that closes the show in one go. So I feel like there's a lot that Jack does that could test Islam. Just like looking at how Islam fights, looking at some of the things that other guys have done to hit Islam, to hurt Islam, to bother him in the past. Dustin Poirier, how did he have some success? It was moving forward, shifting through boxing combinations. It was breaking from the clinch, throwing knees up the middle, which is, again, something Jack is super frequent with, right? If you have any space with Jack and you try and re-engage, he throws that knee as hard as he fucking can. And, he is going for blood on those. He throws elbows in short situations. He's looking to do damage everywhere. And Islam is a guy that is so good and so dominant with the grappling that sometimes people don't talk about the fact that he does wear damage at times and he does get cut up. I mean, look at the Dustin Poirier fight, guys. He's going for the finish there and blood is squirting out of his face, right? He's squeezing, he's exerting, and blood is shooting out of his own face. He's got so much damage on his face. So you just look like Islam is a champion. He's willing to take some damage to win, but he also gets hurt, right? And he gets busted up. In that Volk fight, he was wearing it. He was wearing some damage. He was wearing it from a guy who's 145 pounds, from a guy who's not as big as a guy like Jack, who does not hit as hard as a guy like Jack. And I do think, people are not talking about the fact that most of the guys that Islam has fought are former featherweights. Not just like lightweights, they're former featherweights, guys. They're guys that came up from a weight class below. Volkanovski is one of them, but he's not the only one. There's many of them. And I'm not saying that they weren't, real lightweights that had filled out and gotten bigger. But my point is, you guys think Jack Della is going down to 145? Think he's going down to 155? Like, no, he's a big man. He's going to be bigger than Islam, not by a huge margin, but he's bigger. And I think that when you look at how they match up, I think Islam is a more technical fighter in terms of his grappling and wrestling, especially. I think that Islam is a really well-rounded fighter. Even on the feet, he's a respectable guy. He's got real skills. You cannot take this guy lightly. But I also think that who takes a shot better on the feet, I think it's Jack. Who applies pressure better on the feet, I think it's Jack. Who is a guy that, I kind of trust when shit starts to go sideways, that they're not going to capitulate and give up on me. I also am thinking Jack. I think Islam's not going to punk out, but I do think that Islam has been put in some awkward spots and some vulnerable positions, had to dig deep, had to keep going. That Volk fight again, like if there's 3 minutes left on the clock when he gets dropped there, I don't know how that story ends. Like he was holding on there. He was just taking rescue breaths and trying to make it to the end of the round. And so, again, the way I would play this fight, if I like Islam, I'd look at Islam by sub. I think if he wins this fight, I think if he looks like a big favorite, he takes this guy down, he gets his grappling game going, or he finds one opportunity to latch onto his neck and he gets him, puts him to sleep. But if he does not do that, I feel like Jack Della is going to look better than his price in this fight. I feel like he's going to compete. I feel like if he does not get tapped, he's going to try and work back up to his feet relentlessly. And I have seen other guys get back up to their feet. It's not like Islam takes guys down and every single time they can't get back up. There have been guys that get back up to their feet. Volk is one of them, right? Gets back up, turns away, starts putting the pressure back on. I just feel like Jack last time against Bilal Muhammad fought really hard for 25 minutes. He D'd up the vast majority of the takedowns. He put a lot of heavy shots on Bilal. And when Bilal answered back, Jack wore it better, had a better poker face, took the damage better, rolled with the punches better, threw in combination better, and just outsmarted him. And I feel like when you look at this fight, like Islam's a smart guy. He's well coached. He's got a great team. But they also have a plan for winning fights, which is grappling successfully. And if the grappling does not work here, I don't know that there's a good plan B that they're going to have for how to win this fight. So for me, it's the grappling for Islam or it's Jack finding a way to get this one done. Yeah, man, I'm fucking super fired up for this fight. I've been a Jack Della believer since he beat Angelus on Contender Series. I was like, fuck, the guy's willing to dig deep. In that fight, he gutted out a submission attempt. Against Ramzan Emeev, he gutted out a submission attempt. You don't want to be doing that shit against Islam. But he's also had a lot of time to learn and grow from there. And he's been working with Volk. The one thing that stood out to me in terms of his preparation, his interviews for this fight, Jack Della was saying, listen, I knew about this fight the second that I got out of my title win. Like I won the title. They basically said, hey, man, you're going to fight Islam. I've spent 16 weeks preparing to fight Islam. I've been doing it with Craig. I've been doing it with Volk. I've been doing it with my team. And I'm prepared to fight this guy as best I can be. This guy is not delusional. This guy is confident. This guy is humble. This guy is a hard worker, and he believes he has the answers. He's going to find out tomorrow like the rest of us. But, a lot of people are betting like they already got, Sunday's paper and Islam already won. This is up at 170. This is a prove-it spot for Islam, and he is heavily favored coming in here. I just think when I've looked back historically, when you have a younger guy and they're a champion and they're being overlooked in the spot, I am very reticent to go out there and disrespect a sitting champion, somebody that earned their keep in the UFC. And I feel like Jack Della is being a little bit slept on despite him being so talented and despite him having such great results. Islam is a fucking worthy challenger, right? He deserves the opportunity. He's skipping the line. Nobody says buck about that, right? But Islam minus 150, we're saying, hey, he's got the better wrestling, he's got the better grappling, he's going to go out there and find a way to win. Okay. But we're saying 70% of the time, Islam can bump up 15 pounds and beat the next guy up when he had a 48-47 competitive fight with the guy from a weight class down. I don't know about all that. So for me, super fired up to find out. We're going to learn a lot tomorrow, but it's Islam by sub or JDM money line for me, man. What do you think?
Intriguing fight. A very intriguing fight. I do think a lot of Islam's success is going to be somewhat front-loaded this fight. I'm not saying that it's going to be the case for all of his fights at welterweight or the remaining of his fights. He's not going back down. But I think this first one specifically, it's going to be quite front-loaded. He's not going to know how his body reacts to this new weight class, and he's not going to be at 170 come fight time. He's going to be closer to 185, maybe more, maybe less, who knows. Which is different when you're a guy going from 155, probably rehydrating to 173, 174 on fight night. I think that's still a lot. Quite different when your body holds that extra weight. And Islam, I'm not saying he's a gasser, he's not. But he does slow down a little bit in fights. And putting on weight, especially the first time, you're going up a weight class, fighting for a title, adds a little bit of pressure and some stress to the situation. Now, I'm not saying that Jack's going to survive the early going, but I'm also not saying that he won't. I think Islam is going to have his dominant moments in the first round and in the second round. I do expect him to take Jack down. Now, if Jack is able to effectively scramble, if he shows improvements on the ground and shows that he's able to defend everything coming his way and get up once, twice, 3 times, I'm instantly looking towards that live bet button. Because if pre-fight we're looking minus 300 Islam, after a dominant round 1, you can get a good price. After a good round 2, we can get another good price. But if he's starting to gas out, that's the way I've just been looking to target this fight altogether, because I do like Jack Della Maddalena's boxing a lot more than Islam's boxing. I think he's going to be able to stay at range a lot easier. And the one thing that is very underlooked when it comes to Jack is his footwork. He really is good with his footwork, whether it's defensively or offensively. He cuts the cage off well, and if he's on the defense, he's skirting the cage really well, avoiding the shots. But that's the tale for me. I think Jack is going to be able to land some damage on Islam Makhachev, and I don't know how well Islam's going to be able to take a punch up here at 170. We haven't seen it. I'm not saying that he's going to fold at the first clean power punch to the chin. We just have not seen it. Islam is elite level fighter, not to be taken with the lightest of factors, but at the end of the day, he's still human. And at 170, I just don't have any evidence of anything when it comes to his game. And I have a lot of evidence when it comes to Jack. So I'm going to be looking very seriously into taking Jack live if the opportunity presents itself, because I think that's the where he takes over. Starting round 3 is his best shot going on, because as Islam wears himself down, if he's not able to muscle up the same energy to shoot from a little further out, or to use the extra muscle to pull Jack down like he did in the first and second round, his muscles are filled with lactic acid come round 3 and round 4. Slows down, and Jack is still there. Jack's cardio is there. That's tested. We've seen it. What happens? We'll see tomorrow night.
We will get our answers, my man. I had to shout out my guy. Locker Room in the chat says JDM almost lost to Rafael guy. I think he means Basel Hafez. Was holding him down in that fight. I will say 2 things in retort there, right? Which would be, number 1, Jack was supposed to fight 2 different guys the week before. They canceled the fights. They rescheduled the fights. He's doing the weight cut. They canceled the weight cut. He's midway through. Then they have him cut weight all over again. I'll also point out my boy Tatsuro Taira had a little bit of a down performance in similar circumstances against Edgar Chairez, right? And you look at, when guys have to cut weight twice, shit goes sideways, right? Ask my guy Tony Ferguson. Shit was never the same, So you look at a guy like Jack, he found a way to win, right? But he also is a little too loosey-goosey, going for guillotines. playing around in that fight. And, you know, in rounds 2 and 3, kind of picked up the pace, got on him with the striking. And I feel like what Jack does really well is he knows when to turn it up, right? As soon as he gets a space, a break, an opening, you know, a dip in the action, he starts to turn it up and fill in that space with a lot of volume. And people were talking about it in the comments, the switch stance, the ability to work through different positions, the shifting combinations of Poirier that we're scoring are similar to a lot of the combinations that Jack does work behind. And he also digs to the body. And you were talking about, Wiz, what if the fight goes late? Body work doesn't show always in the first round or the first 2 rounds, but later on in the fight, when you've got 25 minutes to work with, especially if you're trying to push a heavy wrestling and grappling pace, taking away their gas tank is essential. And I think Jack is a guy that understands that. The knees to the body, the punches to the body, that is just as much a deterrent to, hey, you want to try and wrestle me when you're already taking a little bit of a deep breath, feeling a little tired? I don't know about that. So I really respect both these guys. Like, I think it's a great fight. I think both guys are great fighters. Islam has more big favorite upside, right? Jack's going to have to play it a little smarter, win a harder fight here more often than not. But I just think he's capable of doing it. So for me, man, I'm fucking super fired up for the card. It's great from bottom to top, all action. I think we did a pretty good job breaking it down for the people. Knock on wood and Lord willing. Wanted to say thank you to everybody rocking with us live, guys. It is 1:10 a.m. Eastern time here locally. Appreciate everybody who stayed up here. A New York minute been spent watching. And also, guys, most especially, thank you to Wizz MMA being on the show. We got the East Coast, West Coast connection. My guy putting in the time once again. So, Wizz, please let the people know anything you got going on, anything you want to get off your chest. Your information is in the description box below. If they're looking for more, my brother, the floor is yours.
My brother, first and foremost, thanks for having me on. And guys, we apologize for a later show, but somehow, some way, these Friday night shows tend to have quite a bit of audience. If I'm being honest, I think I've seen the most amount of interactions in the chat on Fridays specifically. So thank you first and foremost for just, entertaining us too while we're doing the show. Without you guys, I think, yeah, we could talk on and on, but it's always better when we have people to interact with and bring up comments like we do and shout people out from the community. It really brings us together. So thank you for that. Excited for the fights tomorrow, and I think we really crushed this breakdown. Let's go. I'm excited, man. Nothing more to say. You guys can find me at Wizz MMA everywhere.
Absolutely, brother. Appreciate you. Yeah, guys, yesterday, I just want to let you guys know, Twitter, they did some new message thing, whatever. I'm looking at my phone going, where the hell is Wizz's messages? He's probably looking like, where the hell is this guy? We're supposed to do the show. And I go on my computer, I then see messages I've missed from 3 hours ago. Like, it's all out of whack. Like, it's not showing the right things on mobile to computer, whatever. So that's all the behind the scenes. The reason that, our scheduling is a little bit different, but there will always be a show. Consistency is key. So even if we can't somehow wrangle it all together, there will always be content out on this channel before the fights to make sure that you guys get where you want to go. And again, we won't tell you what to do. We won't tell you how to place bets or whatever. We'll tell you what we're betting. We'll tell you things that we think, things that we believe, the truth as we see it. And then you guys are all adults. You guys figure it out for yourself. So God bless. Good luck. Enjoy those fights. We actually have a really good fight card this week too, so I don't have to tell you guys and hope for the best when I know it's Apex Slop. It's the best that we get in the combat sports space. God bless, good luck, enjoy those fights, and come back next time. We're having all the same fun again. Take care, everybody.